Barry Gray, U.S. Treasury Office of Technical Assistance. I'm a Senior Advisor for Government Debt and Construction Programs.
Excellent.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Gardner, and I'm the Chief Counsel for CLDP. CLDP is better known as the organization within the Commerce Department that is improving the legal environment for business worldwide. That's our motto. We've been doing that for about 28 years. Danika's been around for a lot of those. 20 of them. 20 of them. I've been around for 23 of them, but we're really happy to be here with everybody today, and thanks for joining us. I'm really pleased to welcome Uzbek Nazirov, the Director of Uzbekistan's Capital Markets Development Agency. It's really terrific to have you there. Thanks for setting all of this up, and I hope today will be very productive.
Likewise.
Amir Sultanov from the Embassy, thanks for joining us today, and all that you've done to work with Rick and Michael on all of the events so far. We have a lot of distinguished people from the United States representing a lot of different agencies, but particularly Barry Gray on the phone from Treasury, and Aaron McCartney from SEC. Thank you for all that you have done as part of this interagency process to set everything up. Director Nazirov, as I've seen all the way through these discussions over the last 5 or 6 months, he has a vision. He wants to see thriving capital markets in Uzbekistan, and he understands the role that legislation and regulation will play to make it happen. The United States government and our team of technical experts, we stand ready to work with the Uzbek government to do all that we can to create the reforms and the modern legislation that you might need to really turn your vision into a reality. So we are here to help you however we can. We all know that well-regulated and transparent, competitive and innovative capital markets have a unique role to play, particularly in a place like Uzbekistan, which is bigger in size than California and almost the population. Really, that sort of transformation in a place that size, in that region, could make all the difference in the world. So we're really excited about maybe seeing some of those things happen. As is evident throughout the world, properly established capital markets backed by robust enforcement mechanisms really have the potential to unleash the private sector. And that's really what it's all about, is attracting more private sector investment to the country, and this will help do that. USAID has been a partner of CLDP for many years, and they really come to rely on us to use our techniques and our tools and our experts. And the way we do our programming is through pro bono experts and working throughout the U.S. government and the interagency to pull together the expertise that you need. We tell people all the time that CLDP is demand-driven. So if you and I can understand, or we together can understand, we're trying to get from A to B, we'll plan a course, and we'll do that a little bit later today. How can we get there, and how can we help you get there? We really have no interest in doing something that you're not trying to do. This isn't about the U.S. government telling you what you should be doing. It's what do you want to do and how can we help? So that's always been the way that we've worked. We've had a really good relationship working with Uzbekistan and gosh, for a number of years now, working on customs. Speaking of people who work with us on customs and IP and standards and other trade issues. But I think with this cooperation, this initiative could take our relationship to a whole new level and really solidify some of the things we've been doing in some of the other areas. And I want to thank, in particular, Michael and Rick Stoddard for all that you guys have done to not only set all of this up, but work for so many years in the region and with Uzbekistan to accomplish so many things. Before I close, I did want to share, unfortunately, the last time I was in Uzbekistan was in 1993.
Ooh.
So I know it's terrible, and they sent me 3 years in a row to Kyrgyzstan a few years ago. I went, I've been to Kazakhstan, I've done all sorts of other places, but it was 1993. But I'll tell you, I think about Uzbekistan every day, and here's the reason: because when I was there, down one of the downtown markets, I had an opportunity to do a little shopping. I found a painting. There was a woman who was sort of sitting in the corner, and she had painted a watercolor. And I bought it from her for $4. And it's a picture of an Uzbek man about 65 or 70 years old with a newspaper, glasses, and tea, and it's the most phenomenal painting. It's right at my door. I see it every day. I had it framed for, I think, $60, $4 painting. But I see it every day, and it speaks to me unlike any other piece of art I've ever really seen, and it's the most nondescript picture of a man drinking tea. And I don't know why, but it's just my favorite piece of art. So I have to come back and get another piece of art, because that has really, I show it to everybody. I don't know why, but I'm just completely drawn to it. And it cost me $4.
Taste Uzbek tea.
Taste Uzbek tea, exactly. But really, I just want to say welcome on behalf of the whole Commerce Department and Secretary Ross and everyone.
Thank you very much.
We're excited about the initiative, and I'm happy to hear what you have to say and get started working on all of this.
Thank you very much. Really pleasure to be here in this room and to be joined by really very impressive intra-governmental group that was assembled to support our initiatives. Also, personal thanks to Rick Statter, Michael Caulfield, colleagues at the SEC, and all other agencies who I think found a way to believe in our ideas and helped us throughout the last 6 months or more to make this happen. I cannot tell you how excited I am to have this milestone reached by us jointly, because we were able to convince, most importantly, the president of Uzbekistan that looking at our capital markets is an extremely important exercise, and to revitalize it, to make it attractive so that it becomes a sound place to raise capital, to distribute capital, and finance economic growth of Uzbekistan. So we have a full support of the president. We, together with the Minister of Justice, Mr. Davletov, have now committed to work with you and simplify, I think, more than 100 different legal documents in Uzbekistan that impact capital market regulation rules, and bring them into world-class standards, obviously utilizing the U.S. example and U.S. expertise. To say that we are not committed, or to say that we are committed, is almost to say nothing. Behind me, you only been seeing my face, when you come to Tashkent. I'm coming to Washington, but behind me there's a whole army of committed colleagues in my agency, at the Embassy of Uzbekistan in Washington, colleagues at other agencies in Uzbekistan, and also, I would say, people in the industry or people in the market, the business people, the banks, who are all getting excited about capital markets. Unfortunately, Uzbekistan capital market is tiny. It's small, to say the least. I think statistics, if I'm not mistaken, less than 0.5% of GDP is the market cap of the free float equities and bonds that are traded on Uzbekistan capital markets. When we had that meeting with the president, he even reminded us, looking at northern border countries, Kazakhstan and Russia, their figures are close to 30-40% of GDP. So that's how much gap and how much potential we have, which means all of that, if mobilized appropriately, could fit into economic GDP growth. Looking at or relying only on bank debt or international debt to finance capital markets will probably do more harm to the Uzbek economy, and ultimately we might end up facing what other states are facing, when too much debt on sovereign shoulders is becoming unbearable. So the president fully recognizes the importance of capital markets. We have his support, we have the support of his team, and through this exercise, I hope we will have a functioning working group based in Tashkent, dedicated, to ensure that we effectively utilize assistance provided to us, and that we immediately, deliver results. Lastly, what I want to also say, we recently have completed work on developing capital market strategy for Uzbekistan. That work is being incorporated into a presidential decree, which is a draft presidential decree that's being currently circulated amongst other key government entities. The next step would be to submit an approved or agreed version of this presidential decree to the Cabinet of Ministers, then to the administration, which will lay out, will have a roadmap on implementation of the strategy. And we shared with some of you the concept of the strategy for the next 5 years. Main component of that strategy reform is obviously revision, upgrade, and modernization of capital market related laws. So it will be up to us, bless you, and the working group to decide how far we want to go in kind of capturing regulation or legislative functionalities of this reform. As I just mentioned earlier, with Minister Davletov, we agreed that it probably will make sense to also review our company laws, because the joint stock company law and LLC laws are, again, outdated, very unflexible, and will make it difficult for any foreign investor to come in and understand the foundation. So I hope we can expand the scope of the laws that will be captured under our engagement, maybe not a first phase, but ultimately in a larger exercise. So with all that, I am extremely excited. The only thing I lack in my colleagues is time. I don't think we have a problem with funding, as I understand. We don't have a problem with commitment from our partners, but we have a problem with time. And the President is extremely, I don't want to say impatient, but very ambitious. He understands how much we can do and how much we must do. Therefore, the will of Uzbek government is open for cooperation and to observe at this moment the best practices that we can. So hopefully we'll use this window of opportunity in a short time. And as he said in his, the President said in his address to Parliament, that 2020 will be probably the most important year during the first phase of his presidency. And we just need to help him, myself with my team and all of us, to deliver to the people of Uzbekistan what they deserve. And I think they deserve best of this world. So thank you again, everyone, and it's really a pleasure to be here with you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So the Uzbek government has gotten quite serious about creating its own capital market for the last 2 years, but it's still in a very primitive process, right? Would it be accurate to say that this is the earliest stages of a creation of a capital market for Uzbekistan, as far as you're concerned?
Well, what's in the earliest stages is both reforming or creating a legal and regulatory framework to expand the capital markets in Uzbekistan. So the Capital Markets Development Agency has been working some time already in Uzbekistan with the market that's there, and now the focus is on reforming and expanding the legislation to allow an expansion of the capital markets.
And how can the United States help, assist?
So the United States is already assisting in some ways. They either Department of the Treasury, Securities and Exchange Commission, various U.S. government agencies are making experts available to the Capital Markets Development Agency, to other agencies in the Uzbek government in the form of embedded specialists who are working there on a daily basis, side by side with their Uzbek counterparts. And what we're discussing today is how the Commercial Law Development Program at the Department of Commerce can assist with projects that the Capital Markets Development Agency has been given by the government to develop the legislation.
So it's purely technical assistance, right?
Yes. Yes.
And you obviously, your program, commercial law development program, has experience working with other developing countries.
Correct.
And you have worked in the former Soviet space before.
Yes.
Who have you worked with in Central Asia?
This is our first bilateral project in Central Asia. Previously, the focus of my office work in Central Asia has been regional programming, where we work with all the countries of Central Asia to see ways to implement changes that will help ease border crossing and sort of lower barriers to trade on a cross-border basis. But in terms of helping a specific country with legislative reform, this is our first program.
And Atabek Nazirov, the head of the Capital Market Development Agency, just told us that this is an interagency effort on behalf of the U.S. government,
Yes.
right? What kind of challenges do you anticipate as you work as interagency, as part of the interagency effort?
I think one of the biggest challenges with the interagency effort is time and coordinating schedules. Sometimes the smallest matters can become the biggest obstacle. In that sense, that aside, I find that the interagency people we've been dealing with on this issue are uniquely eager and uniquely helpful to lend their expertise, to make themselves available. Hopefully that will, everyone's schedule and other constraints will allow that to continue. And so far, the interagency process has been an issue of agencies trading their strengths with each other, which has been welcome. And so there really haven't been the challenges. Maybe as we get down the road, we'll encounter other challenges, of course. I think working with any large group of people, there are challenges inherent just in group dynamics, but I'm very encouraged by the way this group has worked together so far.
And what should be the level of, I guess, patience and tolerance when it comes to something like this? Because, as you know, the Uzbek government wants to deliver, and Atabek Nazirov just mentioned that President Mirziyoyev is eager to see progress in this field. So what would you advise them in terms of, patience and pace?
I think that patience and thinking things through, especially at the beginning, is a better guarantee of the work progressing at the tempo it needs to satisfy the deadlines that are stated for the work. And so it can be counterintuitive that we need to slow down in order to speed up. But I think that's my advice. Let's make sure we all understand the scope of the assignment, and let's take time to carefully think through, even painstakingly maybe think through. But that time invested at the start will translate into the ability to function later in a flexible and quick manner.
So in a way, it's okay if things start slowly, but pace yourself.
Yes, and start slowly, not simply in order to start slowly, but start slowly in order to set them up to then move the way that they need to move quickly and thoroughly, and with the end goal in mind.
This is actually an intragovernmental effort between several agencies of the U.S. government, including the State Department, Department of Commerce, U.S. Treasury, Security Exchange Commission, all of them coming together to make an assessment of our existing capital market infrastructure, our capital market laws, and see how they can assist us in upgrading it, making it more effective, so that it is become understood and acceptable by international investor community. As you know, capital markets are most advanced in countries like United States. They're dynamic, they're free, and the rules of regulation and enforcement capabilities are very much have a proven track record of hundreds of years. In Uzbekistan, in a new economy that is just growing and trying to put its own footprint on global financial markets, it is very important that we take best world practice, and obviously the United States is a place to come.
You just said something really interesting. You said that the capital market in Uzbekistan right now doesn't even constitute 0.5% of the
GDP.
What can Americans do now to help you push that forward?
Well, the Americans obviously have the expertise. As you know, the rule of law in the United States, the respect for law, and the way the legal architecture is structured is very friendly towards the investors, towards capital owners, towards minority shareholders, and the rules of engagement between those who seek capital and between those that have capital are very straightforward, transparent, and understood. So we need to find a way how we can learn from this experience and bring the best practice to Uzbekistan's capital markets. Everything that has to do with interface, as I said, between the issuers and investors, relationship between the corporations and the shareholders, the board of directors. All of that is, at the end of the day, will fall onto the legal framework and how individuals involved in the system interact with each other, how they solve their disputes, how a court system acts. Is the court independent? Is the securities market regulator independent? All of that is part of the building of market economy. And this is something we desperately need. And capital markets attract financing outside of the classical banking sector.
So you're basically asking the United States to be as constructive, as open-minded as possible as they go in, right? You're definitely anticipating a lot of challenges there because it's not easy to bring together the interagency efforts of the Uzbek government.
Yes.
What are some of the major challenges that you see in front of you now?
The major challenge is to be able to relay the importance of capital market infrastructure to our partners in Uzbekistan.
To the system, basically.
To everybody who is involved, to the stakeholders. As I said, classical model of developing or financing the economy in Uzbekistan was through the banking system and by using state guarantees to borrow from international financial institutions. But what the domestic capital market formation allows is to creating an independent ecosystem where private sector can mobilize capital, and the relationship between investors and those that use proceeds of investments have more fair ground. So it is a critical component. Unfortunately, because the system never existed in Uzbekistan, it is not always easy to get people on board, to have a buy-in. So a lot of hand-holding, a lot of educational, but it will take time, we'll get there.